I am so excited. Here at Faith Christian Broadcast, under the leadership of Reverend and Lady Galloway, we love bringing quality opportunities or people to share their stories, and today will be like none other. We're so excited to connect with Dr. Yasmin Talahill and her enthusiasm in wanting to bring her mom and a family friend together to share their stories. Listen, Faith Christian Broadcast is here for you, and so today we're going to share life the way it was. We're going to give you nuggets of wisdom. Our heart desire is to help you, the audience, to in your situation or just some history, because it's based on our history. You will know how to work in your present and in your future. I am Pastor Patricia Hicks Dupont, and as always, it's a pleasure and an honor. So Dr. Hill, since you was the one to connect with me first, could you just share a little bit about yourself and you officially introduce these two wonderful ladies?
Well, I just wanted to say that I grew up in Jasper County in Wagon Branch, the Tillman area. That's where my family is from. And of course, to my right is my mother, Mrs. Jessie Tyler, who was my first teacher. And obviously, I've known her all my life, or she's known me. And then Miss Florence Morris, who I've also felt like I've known all my life. She was a great friend of my grandmother's, Mama C, in our church. And so, and my daughter doing research about our family tree, I noticed in the 1870 census that many of the families, the Morris Fulton family, which Ms. Flo comes from, and the Wright family and the Polite family, were all from this Wagon Branch area. And I was very interested in how they got there and how they bought land. And how they were such a successful group of people. For instance, Ms. Flo's brother owned one of the first stores up in New York with his family. He had, he was a small business owner. And the number of physicians and lawyers and professional people who came from Wagon Branch. And the two mainstays were two churches, St. John AME Church and St. Matthew Baptist Church. And they really crossed over. I went to service at both.
Oh, wonderful.
So I just wanted to hear these ladies give a part of their history, and I've learned so much. I can go back to the census of 1870 and show that my grandfather's grandfather was there and was born in 1851 and was in Tillman in 1870 and was on a plot of land and was a laborer. And what I'm hearing, and I want Flo to tell me a little bit more about, she talked about when her father came and how he came, came from a part of South Carolina, went to Georgia, and then came. Would you go ahead and tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I'm talking about my father right now. He came along to King Street, South Carolina, and he said that they came on a trolley from a little town. He said that it was nothing but Indians, but he was a part of the Indian tribe too.
Okay.
And they come along, and he said that they they parked in King Street, South Carolina, and they stayed there for a while. And he said after that, then they took a trolley, a CC cab. They took the CC cab. They had 100 people, and he said about 20 men, more or less, and they on the CC cab, and they went to Homerville, Georgia. He said he was a young boy, 12 or 13 years old, and the most he said none of them was 20. All of them were young, but they went to Homerville, and they found a job. And they were digging ditches, doing the canal, and dipping gums. And he said that he was able to do the canal with the shovel, and if they not cleaning out the canal and so the water could run, so the land could get dry, he said he was dipping gum. And from dipping the gum, he said that when they dip the gum, they cut the trees so that the turpentine could drip. And when the turpentine dripped in the barrel, then he had to pour it out one barrel into a smaller barrel, and they towed it on their back. And he said that they worked from Homerville, Georgia, all the way back to Jasper County. He said that when they got there, during the time at nighttime, they sleep in any little trolley that they could sleep. Sometimes they would sleep side the road because they didn't have a home yet. But as they come along, then they got places that they could save enough money to buy them a spot of ground. So he bought a spot of ground in Tillman. They call it the low country of Tillman. And he found his brother, himself, and two more brothers. They put together, and they had lands. And he said been about 20 people all purchased lands. And he said after they purchased the land, he was able to build a log cabin, 4 rooms house, and he went back to Homerville, Georgia, and that's when he got married. He get his wife, and he raised 3 children. My sister Ruth, Eddie, and Francis. And they moved back to Jasper County. And that's where I was born, and my brother.
Outstanding.
So you were one of the youngest ones.
Yes.
What's very interesting, if you look at the census, you can see the families and the plots they bought because they were contiguous. When they did the census, they would come and interview a family. And so we were next to the Polites and the Nortons. The Fultons were across the road a bit. And these families went on down. So following Highway 336, on my father's side, they were also from Georgia. So I think if anybody's looking to do their family history, I think starting with the census, but also understanding what was the work that was done. Now remember, there were also the quarters down in Tillman. Do you know what the quarters were?
Quarters.
What was
The
that?
river quarters, that was a mill.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
they do lumbers and do trees, they have the trees and they make boards out of it. That was river quarters. And they had a lot of people living there. And they would do a lot of things there. It was a mill. Yes.
So obviously that was the work that was done there.
Yeah.
And was your family, how did your family, your mother's side and your father's side, because you came from Hardyville.
Yes, I was born in Hardyville, and 2 of my other siblings were born in Hardyville. That was my brother Henry, who was the oldest, my brother Leroy, and I were born in Hardyville. And at that time, they didn't have hospitals, so we were delivered by what you call midwife.
Yes, ma'am.
So I remember my mother told me that Miss Ada was my midwife. And so my dad worked for Origin Lumber Company in Hardyville, and we lived there for a while. Then later on, my dad decided he was going to move to his home, which was Tillman. And so we moved to Tillman, South Carolina. And my sister, Elizabeth, which is the youngest, was born in Tillman. And her, she also had a midwife. Her midwife was Miss Fulton. Louise Fulton delivered Lizzie. But we moved to Tillman when Henry, Leroy, and I were in elementary school. We went to the school called Ellis Community School, which was located almost behind St. John AME Church. From there we went to Ridgeland Training School. And I think that went to like 8th grade. I think Ellis Community went like from 1st grade through 7th grade, and then 8th grade there. And then in the year of 1955, they built a new school, which was named Jasper High School. So we attended Jasper High School. At Jasper High School, I played basketball, I sang on the choir, and I held several positions, class position like reporter. And I was one of the class beauties. I don't know why, but anyway, there were 12 of us, and we were called the beauties, So anyway, and I remember back, we had a great choir. We had a great basketball team, the girls and the boys. At that time, we're playing basketball. We only played half of the court. So you had some of us were guard and some of us were forward. So I played the position of guard, okay? And we played, schools near us, like in Fairfax and those schools. And I could remember one night that we played so hard, was trying to win the tournament, but we were not successful because on that night, one of our team members got her finger broke. Okay, so, but anyway, back during that time too, we had a band, we, like I said before, we had the choir, we had the basketball teams, and every year we would have a play. We would have activities, like the morning, once a week almost, or once a month. We would, the school would come together, all the classes would come together, and we would have an assembly program. And students from the various classes would be the participants on those programs. Well, after I graduated from high school, when I was about to graduate from high school, I did receive a full scholarship to Bethune-Cookman College. But at that time, I was dating my husband, who is deceased now. But anyway, and I was going to go, and then I think he sort of encouraged me, and then we got married. After marriage, then we had like three daughters, Yasmin, Con, and Condra. Okay, after I had Yasmin, I decided that I would go to college anyway. So I attended Savannah State College along with my husband. And let me tell you the story of my husband, because he was a dropout. He dropped out of school in the 11th grade. He was 17 years old. And he said school was not interested to him any longer. So then he asked his mother to sign him in the Army. And she did, but he promised her that he would finish college. After he spent those 3 years in the Army and had an honorable discharge, he enrolled at Savannah State College, which is Savannah State University now. There they had a program that you could take an exam, I guess an entrance exam. And if you passed that exam, you could continue your education at Savannah State. But if you didn't pass it, you would have to take remedial courses. But he was blessed. So he took it and he passed it. And he went on and he finished college there. And his major was mathematics with a minor in physics. So he and I rode to Savannah State after I had Yasmin. His mother kept her so that I would be able to also attend college. So later on, I got pregnant with my second child, which was Con. And after that, I continued. So he graduated in the year of 1959 from Savannah State College. And I graduated in the year of 1963. After graduating from Savannah State College, well, I had a major in elementary education. So I finished before the school year because the college was on a quarter basis, not semester. So I finished before the last quarter in that year. So after I finished, one lady that was working there was en route to Robertville Elementary School, and she had a car accident. and they called and asked me to finish her year out, so I did.
Wow.
And so after that, then in South Carolina,
Mhm.
you would have to take what you call an NTE, and your pay was based on that. Whether you made an A, a B, C, or whatever.
Mhm.
So my first time that I took it, I didn't make an A, I made a B.
Mhm.
But I said, I prayed, and God enabled me when I took it the second time.
Yes, ma'am.
I did make the A. Now, when my husband, he was not under teaching curriculum.
Right.
So therefore, he was offered a job in Washington, D.C. And he thought about going there, and he thought about it. He said, well, the expense would be too much there.
Mhm.
So he applied for a position in Jasper County Board of Education, but they would not hire him. So he applied in Beaufort County, and they hired him. I'll never forget, his first principal was Mr. Austin,
Mhm.
and he was hired as a math teacher. So he taught there for 31 years, and he retired in the year of 1990.
Mhm.
And I can remember that a lot of the teachers in that school, I met some of them, by going with him back to basketball, football games, and what have you. And they were saying, Mr. Tyler is an excellent math teacher, and I want my child to be under him for math. And he did a lot of that. And I also remembered one child in his class, and he was not one of us,
Mhm.
but he attended West Point.
Wow.
And he wrote my husband a letter and said, Mr. Tyler, because of you teaching me math, I've been able to graduate, and I certainly would love for you to come to my graduation.
Wow.
Well, at that time, we didn't have money, to pay for traveling and all like that. So anyway, he could not go, but he did respond to that student and told him how proud he was. Okay. And Wagon Branch, we have
Before you go on about Wagon Branch, can you tell us a little bit, were the schools integrated at that time?
the school were not integrated at that time. And later on, when Yasmin was in third grade, I think it was, second grade, Carl was in first grade. So they had the integration of school, I think it was in 1970, if I'm not mistaken.
A little bit earlier than that.
Louis,
Yeah, there
But
were
that's
two
the year-
sections of the integration process. It was the first one where Black kids were allowed, or African American children were allowed to go to the quote unquote white school. It was not total integration. There were still two separate schools. And then and so there were just two of us in my second grade class, me and Jeffrey Grant. And then in 1970, there was a total combination of schools. And that's when Thomas Hayward Academy was born.
Right.
And there was many schools when there was basically white flight. And so those schools came about. So I just wanted to say that Ellis Community was one of the historical schools put in the South to educate.
Because speaking about Ellis Community School, that's the school that my young family, Virginia Beaton, I went to school there and I loved her in her grade because I went there from first grade to fourth grade and she made me learn because I went to school and I would always play and she would always tell me, you think you're cute with your black self with your big legs. I knew I was cute.
That's right. That's
And
right.
she said, but you're going to get your lesson today. And she would do that. And she would tear my leg up and make me work. And I get my lesson. And I am proud of her today in her grade
Yeah.
because she taught me what I know today. And I was with her from first grade to fourth grade. She had me all four
And
years.
it's a very
And it was very, very good in Ellis Community School. But I want to finish telling you about me in school because when I leave from there, it's like Ms. Tyler said, then we went over to the first school. There where Mr. Glassgill was, Mr. Ridge and Training. Then we left from there, and then we went on to Ridgeland Elementary. And in 2 years, I had to go. I didn't have to, but I wanted to go to New York and get a job because my mom was sick and Daddy was the only one working. So then I had to go and work. So I worked for 2.5 years in New York at Golden Convalescent Home Nursery. And I was there 2.5 years. And I made good little change and I come back home. After I come back home, I went back in school. And I still was going to school. And that was good because Mr. Blassengale was, he was a teacher there at night. He was a principal there. But I was under Mr. Hills and Mr. McAllister. Yes. And they were my teacher. And I just got good. I just got good and I knew I was a good student. So in biology class with Mr. McAllister, that was a good class for me. And as I grew up, and after that, then I got a job at the school. I graduated from in cooking. I just got good, and I knew I was a good student. So in biology class with Mr. McAllister, that was a good class for me. And as I grew up, and after that, then I got a job at the school. I graduated from in cooking. I can't remember the lady name, but we had Miss who?
Miss McQueen was.
Miss McQueen, home economic, and she taught me how to cook. So we had the cooking class there. Make biscuit, make cinnamon rolls, make cornbread. And I did that. And after I leave from there, I went to cooking, to give me a job at the school. And I was there 33 years.
Oh, wow.
Making bread. I make
Best
bread.
lunches.
That's exactly
33
where
years.
I know you from.
33 years.
Yes.
And I leave from there. When I retired from there, I went to Robertville, senior citizen. I was there 16 years at Robertville Senior Center. I leave from Robertville Senior Center and went to Esther.
Wow.
As the senior citizen there in Esther, I was there 6 years. So I enjoy every bit of it. Over food and everything was good. So I just had to bring that in because I had a good time.
Oh my.
Okay, let's back up with.
Go right ahead and back up.
But the integration of school. They have the choice plan. So then the Towlers, the Brantley, and I think it was the Orrs. Well, I know they were one of the first ones to integrate the school in Jasper County. And I remember the school bus will pick my children up. And they had a problem with getting on the bus because the bus driver, they were students, and they were always telling them to go to the back of the bus. So one day, I was teaching in Beaufort at that time. I stayed from school and I stood at the bus stop for them. And I told them, I said, get on the first vacant seat and sit. And I left there and I went to the supervisor of transportation at that time. And I said to him what was going on. And he said, well, you know what, Ms. Tyler, I'm going to call them all together. And I'm going to tell them, what they shouldn't do about students getting on the bus. I said, no, because I'm not going to let my children walk to the back of the bus and then they try to trip them. So he took care of that, But I also remembered when my kids were at Region Elementary School, they would not have those kids to participate in different activities. And so I went out there, my husband and I, we went to the school and we said to the principal, who was Miss Leah Jones at that time, and then we said to her that we want our children to participate in the Christmas activities and anything that you all have going on here. So one Christmas, it might have been their first Christmas, but they only had 2 children to participate. And it really hurt my heart, but I could not speak for other parents, okay? Yasmin had a speaking part, and Con was an angel in the Christmas program. Okay, they had a music person and teacher, a private music teacher teaching piano lessons to the students, but the parents had to pay. So I wanted Yasmin to take music. So then they told me that they would have to talk with the teacher, and I think her name was Mrs. Bedell. And so I spoke with her, and she said, "Well, I only have, I think it was 60 students, and I can't take any more." So I said, "Thank you." So what I did, my husband and I, we called Atlanta, the EOC, and I told them what was going on. And so they called Regional Elementary School and spoke to the principal, and they told her that, that they would have to take her, or she could no longer work in that school. Now, I don't know whether it was by letter or by phone or what have you, but I know they called me and said that my daughter would be able to take piano lesson. So at the end of that year, they had the piano instructor had a recital. And I remember that, Yasmin had her part, well, it was 61 because she had 60 students before. So Yasmin made the 61st students. So when we went to the recital, I called out, my mother-in-law went, and a family member by Miss Albertha Glover went, and I called my girlfriend and her husband in Savannah, the Taylors, and they came, and Hubert and I. So my parents were living in Connecticut, and I was telling them what's going on. My mother said, "Well, you're going to have to well dress that child. So we're going to send the money down for you to buy her a beautiful dress." And so I went to Punch and Judy in Savannah, and I'll never forget, I bought her this pink dress, yes, and had it all fixed up. So I said, "Well, we're going to have to applaud, for her." And I told Yasmin, I said, "Now you're going to play that piano. You're not going to miss it in those notes." And I'm not saying that because she is my child. But that night she played that piano and didn't miss a note. And I thought it was going to only be the ones of us, but all of them, I got to give it to them. They applaud for her also, So when Yasmin was in Region, my kids were in Region school. And Yasmin came home one day and said to me, and I had just had Condra, I think it was, and she said that, "Mom, I'm gonna drop out. I said, I'm not going back to school anymore." I said, "You're not going back to school anymore?" She said, "No." So when my husband told him Buford, he came home, and I told him, I said, "Yasmin is thinking about not going back to school." He said, "Well, we're gonna have to do something because I was a dropout, and I do not want her to be a dropout." So I said, "What must we do?" So we thought about it. I went to the counselor at school and I talked with her, and she told me that, they have something that these kids can take an exam. They call it an entrance exam or whatever. So we had Yasmin to take that exam, and she scored in the 99 percentile. And there were 4 private schools that wanted her. And so it was a hard decision to make. But with us seeing our child drop out of school, Hubert said, "Well, I can't have what's going on. We're going to have to do something." So out of the school that applied, one was in Bethesda, Maryland, the Holton Arms School. So he has a brother and a sister that lives in Washington, D.C., which wasn't far. So we selected that school for her to go to. And what happened, the headmaster and his family came down to Ridgeland to meet with us so they could tell us about the Holton Arms School. It was a school for girls. And he said that, "I'm going to tell you right now, you have to talk to your daughter about her spending money because kids come to this school can spend $300 and $400 a day if they want to because their parents are doctors, councilmen and all that." I said, "Well, we'll do that." But we were able to send her. She got a full scholarship at the Holton Arms School. She went there from 8th grade through 12th grade. But I'm going to tell you this, it's hard when you have to let your child leave home at the age of 13. But I think I cried for a month, y'all, and I prayed. But God answered my prayer. And she was able to stay there. I think the last 2 years, her 11th and 12th grade, the school closed the boarding part.
Okay.
And so
we said, well, what we're going to do. But there was another black family that lived in D.C., but their child still voted at the Holton Arms School, the Hensons. And they said to us, no, let Yasmin come and stay with us. There was a white family who wanted her to stay with them. But we selected, black family for Yasmin to live with. And she lived with them those last 2 years of school. In the 11th grade, President Ford's daughter graduated from that school.
Wow.
And Yasmin was selected. I don't know whether you had an officer or what, but she was one of the leaders of the line for that graduation. And she graduated from there, and she said that she wanted to go to Princeton University. And when we saw the cost of Princeton University, being a poor family from Jasper County, and both of us were teachers, and at that time, teachers didn't really make that much money. So I said, Lord, what must we do? So I prayed about it, and God was good. I tell you what a mighty God we serve. And Yasmin was able to get a scholarship, but our part at that time, I think Princeton was like $10,000. But at that time, whatever our part was, they allowed us to pay in full payments. And so we did. My husband also had a farm. He farmed 25 acres. And, he planted string beans, he planted corn, he planted soya beans. And my two oldest daughters, Yasmin and Con, are only 2 years apart. So every year that Yasmin and Con, I'm going to tell you, we serve a wonderful God.
Man.
Those 2 years that they were in school at the same time, God blessed us that on that farm, we were able to make enough money to pay for Con's scholarship at South Carolina State University now. Okay. So Yasmin graduated from Princeton University. And then she said, well, her dad asked her, well, what you going to do? She said, I want to go into medical school. So he said, yeah. So then he said, well, go for it. And she did. So I'm just saying that, I'm not bragging on my children because I never tell anybody about what they do.
Oh.
I have asked people have come to me and said, but why you don't tell people you have two daughters that are doctors? I said, I don't think that's necessary. And you have one as a teacher. I said, but I don't think that's necessary. But my husband ran for the Board of Education. When he was running, a lot of people were breaking him down saying, well, you have a child in a private school. His campaign was the reason why my child is in a private school because the school district was not offering her what she really needed.
That's right.
And I was a dropout. So that's why my child is at a private school. And I'm here for those parents who may not be able or cannot do. I want to see all kids learn, develop their potential. And that's why I'm running for the school board. So he was blessed. I think he stayed on the board about 20 years.
Long time.
But anyway, I just, it's sort of get me sort of upset sometime and I talk about it because, we went through a whole lot with the integration of schools, and what have you. And I remembered, I'm getting back to the Wagon Branch community. When Dr. Bill Sinkerton came to Jasper County, he came as a community coordinator.
Okay.
He went around, I think it was 15 or 18 different communities that he went to. And he helped us to organize, we had the chance to brainstorm and say, what we want in our community. And we met at St. John AME Church that night. And I remembered that at that night, we list different things. And one was recreation. And someone said, well, Jesse Tyler, why don't you don't take that one? And I said, okay. I took the chairmanship of the recreation department, and the other people that were there had the opportunity of saying what committee they wanted to work on. Well, on my committee, believe it or not, Alim Etuma and I were the only two youngest person on my committee. There was Miss Cleo Tyler, Miss Minnie McCullough, Miss Ada Toomer, Miss okay, Theodos's mother, Miss Inez Drayton, and Miss the other lady was Mrs. Oh, I can't think of her name right now. But she was on it because she was our treasurer. I remember when we organized. I hope it'll come to me. But she was a member of it also. Okay, I'm sorry, I can't recall the name right now. But anyway, we organized, that committee, and we started meeting at my house. And so we brainstormed to what we wanted to see in the form of recreation in there. So I said to them, I said, I would like to see a community center because we can do so many things for the young people. And they said, oh, that's a good idea, And then they started saying, other things that we could do. They wanted a basketball court. They wanted a swimming pool, They wanted a baseball, park and all like that. So when my husband heard about our committee, he said to me, he came to me, he said, Jesse, he said, Okatee Club has land right there because his mother used to have, remember they had the feeding program, the summer feeding program, and Miss Tyler used to do the summer feeding program, and she used to do it out of her shop. But then she started doing it across the street from her on a big oak tree. I guess you all remember that. Mm-hmm. So he said, where mom is doing that land belonged to the Okatee Club. So why don't you all get in touch with the superintendent of that club and see whether they would donate you all some land? So I said, oh, that's a good idea. So I called the group back together. We got together and they said, oh, that's a good idea. I said, well, we need to compose a letter to send to, because he told me the guy's name was Mr. Attaway. He was the superintendent. So we got a letter together and we sent it to Mr. Attaway, and he replied and he said, well, the Yankees come down, to hunt. So when they come, I will deliver the letter to them. And they have a board, they would have the vote on it. Well, it took like several years before that went through. So when they finally agreed, they said that they would not give it to the community because we were like a private group. But if we could check with county council and ask, would they accept the land? And so we went to county council and they did. So that is the reason why that's the beginning of the Wagon Branch Community Center. Story. And then, about that. Yeah, okay then. Well, let me let that go. Okay then.
And so that was perfect because I was going to say, I appreciate your coming and sharing, and we're gonna have a part two. We have to have a part two. That I have. Oh my! All that you went through, and I took notes about the self-confidence, and so many young people are letting other people them who they are, and you have them committing suicide and stuff like that.
Yes.
To hear you at a young lady, young girl say, "I know I'm cute, even with my dark chocolate." Young people need to know that.
Yes.
So just enjoy their skin. Be it mocha, be it, light chocolate, deep chocolate, just enjoy who you are.
Right.
Another one that just said out to me is when you want to jump out, it's not that children are bad.
No.
Sometimes they're not being challenged. The teachers, yeah, they're not being challenged. And so I appreciate how your husband and you decided, let's get her tested. Sometime, and parents, I'm telling you, you know how I roll. It is imperative that you realize, don't just agree with the negativity of somebody's opinion, but get them tested, because a test will show so much. And because of the testing, look at your daughter now, a doctor. I see my time is elapsing, so we're going to close this chapter. Okay. But please work in your schedule that you can come back again. On behalf of Pastor Galloway and Lady Galloway, we want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. This has been far above my expectation, and we want to get the comments from those that are viewing. Peace and blessing is our prayer. We're going to sign off now before I start talking. We appreciate you so much for coming. Thank you. Thank you.
And that other lady was Patient Davis. Okay.
And I think we got that on. I won't get her name on there.